Kia ora and welcome along to the Met Service National Forecast. As we head into Friday and the weekend, we are still looking at some heavy rainfall across parts of the western side of the country and up across those northern parts of the South Island. You can see on the satellite pictures, this cloud continuing to stream in from the north. Beneath that, a fair amount of wet weather and also embedded amongst it some thunderstorms as well. So we are looking at still things being pretty unsettled through places like Northland, parts of Taranaki, and also in towards places like Nelson and Marlborough. So do keep an eye on those watches as we go through the next few days. You can see on these charts that this wet weather isn't far away from that western side of the country. It continues to feed in towards Westland, the likes of Buller, Nelson, Marlborough, and up in towards, say, Northland as well. In amongst that, some heavy falls, so we are going to find there's still plenty of severe weather watches and warnings in place, especially for that western side of the country. Now, the heaviest rainfall in towards the tops of the ranges. We could find as much as 200 odd millimetres through some of the ranges through parts of the Nelson region. So do keep a close eye on those severe weather watches and warnings. It is looking like a pretty wet story as we go through the rest of today for Friday. And you can see on the charts here, through in towards the night time, there's not an awful lot of movement on this front at all. So we'll keep hold of that wet weather in Northland, and down towards the top of the South Island. Even in towards Wellington, we'll keep that wet weather. More showery conditions in through the Bay of Plenty. Generally, though, down towards, like I say, southern Canterbury and Otago, a dry night in store. In terms of our temperatures, we're still beneath that very mild air. So our temperatures across the North Island, particularly incredibly mild for the time of year. 17s, 18s is our minimum temperatures as we go through in towards the early hours of Saturday morning. Down south, single figures. But even here, I think Queenstown, 9 degrees Celsius, a fine looking night for you. Just a touch more cloud later on. As we head through the night time in towards the early part of Saturday, you can see this front lingers across those northern parts of the South Island and across that far western side of the north. Either side of it, things are generally looking a little bit better and brighter. A touch more cloud across the North Island, but a fine looking story down towards those southern parts of Canterbury, Otago, and even in towards Southland as well. So we are going to find things are better down on the South Island. We start off, though, up in the north. We have got this wet weather across those more northern parts of Northland, mainly north of Whangarei, but we are going to find some heavy bursts in there. So do keep a close eye on those watches and warnings. Northerly winds tend to bring more cloud through the likes of Auckland, down towards the Bay of Plenty, perhaps bring with it a few showers as well. But I think the wettest weather stays just off out towards the west. And an improving story for the likes of, say, Taranaki, but even here we'll still catch a few showers about the mountains. Head down towards, let's say, Wellington and the Kapiti Coast, a bit of a wet start, but rain should become much more showery as we head through in towards the afternoon, and then generally a drier story out towards this eastern coast, and even some brightness and some sunshine for the likes of, say, Hawke's Bay and Gisborne. In terms of our temperatures, with that mild, muggy, humid air still over us, we're still looking at highs up to around about 21, 22 degrees Celsius for Auckland and down towards the likes of Wellington, not far off either, 18s and 19s. And those nighttime temperatures, those blue figures, still very mild as we head through in towards the early hours of Sunday morning. Heading down towards the South Island, immediately our eye is drawn to this wet weather across the Marlborough Sounds, Nelson, and across in towards Buller as well. That's going to be slow moving and reluctant to clear away those northern parts. So do keep an eye on those severe weather watches and warnings. As we head down that eastern coast, generally a drier story once we get down towards the likes of, say, Canterbury. Some nice clear skies, bit of high cloud across those northern parts. But you'll notice as we go on towards that western coast, a few showers to watch out for, a touch more cloud. But I think the wettest weather for those areas up in towards, say, Buller and northwards. But the best of the weather as we go through Saturday, likely down in the far south. And we're going to find our temperatures on the South Island as well. Still very pleasant indeed. Look at these highs for Canterbury and down towards the likes of Otago and Dunedin, 21 degrees Celsius. That's not far off what we'll see across the far northern parts of the country. An incredibly warm and looking day there as we go through in towards May. A little bit cooler on that western coast, but even here, highs of 19 degrees Celsius. And again, our overnight temperatures relatively mild as we head through in towards the early hours of Sunday. Now, as we go through Sunday, you can see that feature of wet weather is still very close by. It still brings that wet weather on towards the western coast. There are some warnings as well for the likes of, say, Westland as we head through to Sunday. You can see that front doesn't move very far at all. We might find a few more showers pushing back in towards Auckland towards the end of the day, but generally I think we'll keep hold of the same sort of setup. We have those northerly winds, so the further you are towards the north, the more cloud you'll get and a chance of a few of those showers. down towards the likes of, say, Wellington, a better, brighter looking day on Sunday. And for the likes of, say, Canterbury and Christchurch, not a bad looking story for Sunday as well. It's worth saying, as we head towards next week, this front eventually moves back across the country. We've got more wet weather waiting out over the Tasman Sea. So do keep an eye on the forecast, especially across those northern and western parts of both islands. Got more wet weather for us as we go through towards next week. Eventually, as we head through to about Wednesday, Thursday, we'll find these fronts clear away. The return of some much cooler temperatures as we head through towards the end of the week. So a bit of a change as we go through next week. So do keep up with the forecast. But for the time being, the wettest weather looks to be on those western sides of the country. That's it from me. That's from metservice.com.